One Sunday morning, I woke up and rolled over to look at my wife, Rose, my partner of 5 years. She pulled my head towards her as well and kissed me gently. She was obviously tired, and I told her I had been trying to. She says I'm doing great, but she's not pregnant yet. To keep our patience, we chatted about her work for a while, as usual. After a brief conversation about the job, I suggested to Ed that she take on a regional sales management position. Rose said I should take a shower first. She agreed with my plan, and then I went to get my specialty coffee. I found Ross's wallet on the kitchen counter and took the keys from there. I opened the zipper inside and found the birth control pills Ross had promised me. A few months ago, she stopped taking birth control pills because we were trying to start a family. The pills were missing, so I flipped open the package and saw that the prescription was only a few weeks old, which meant I put everything back in its place as it was and crept upstairs to get the key. With Rose not hearing me, I was really confused and my mind was racing with thoughts, and I didn't understand why she was doing this. I'm pretty sure she's not having an affair because when she's not having an affair, at work, she was with me and her close girlfriend was the only person involved, but her husband was also I know where she is almost all the time, except during work hours. I was under the impression that she didn't want children, although she seemed to be trying. In the afternoon, Rose nudged me out of my daydreaming. She noticed that I looked a bit disoriented and told me to get ready. Since we were going to be late for dinner at Bill and Sherry's, Bill also wanted Ross to help out at his store. When we got there, Bill noticed something was wrong and asked me what was wrong, and I told him everything was fine. But he continued to press me, saying he urged me to share my concerns, and I reluctantly told him that Rose had stopped taking the. A few months ago, we discussed her reasons for doing this. The investigator emphasized my emotional state and noted that only a few hours had passed. Whether Rose was having an affair, he said she wasn't. Pi makes sure she's not with anyone else, so I can talk to her about the baby and maybe understand why she lied. Regarding the Monday morning meds, I hired a Pi who was a professional in our company. After we talked, the PI said he didn't think Rose was having an affair based on the information I gave him. I also said that I needed to see her medical records because, despite regular checkups, women may experience unexpected problems. As hard as I tried to hide my feelings, I couldn't get close to Rose, and finally on Saturday, she asked me. She tried to put the blame on me for my lack of interest in her. This led to our first big fight when I told Bill. He warned me that if I didn't change my behavior soon, Ross would suspect me of being a lady. I asked for forgiveness, saying that I had acted out of fear. It made me wonder for the first time if she was having an affair. In the middle of week 3, the Keep Calm Bill helped me a lot to stay focused and positive. I was thinking about Ross's upcoming 25th birthday and wanted to plan something special, and I was inspired by this. From Bill's wife, Shirley, who decided to throw a half-50-themed birthday party that included a cane cut in half. At the meeting with the Pi on Thursday morning, I don't expect it to last more than 30 minutes. We talked for over 2 hours. I met with Pierre Bill. He called me, and we arranged to meet. I was on my third drink when Bill joined me at the bar. As I pushed the folder over to Bill to look at, I gave him the basic facts about the hurricane. Pi's discovery, he looked at the picture with the time and date and asked me what the CD in the folder was, and I told him it was a video of Rose and her boss in an inappropriate situation. Pi suggested I watch the video and, more importantly, listen to this conversation. Bill calls his wife and asks her to take Rose to the movies or the mall, saying it's for her. Sherry was excited to surprise Rose and Bill while I watched the CD. I was surprised by what Pi said. I didn't realize Rose was seeking a promotion with her boss. We sat down together. There was a moment of silence, and then I told Bill that if Rose told me she was in love with her boss or needed more from me, I would. I know I'm going to be hurt and disappointed, but I'm okay with that just to get. I told him I was hurt and angry and made it clear that Ross would feel the same way. Then she said that looking at Rose and her boss was like seeing her there in person, but he pointed out that she had prioritized her work over our marriage anyway, and now she had to. Handing me my drink, Bill added that the girls would be home soon and asked if I knew what I was doing. I replied that I thought I knew what to do, so I looked it up. I told Bill that it was Rose's birthday next Monday, and I had decided to give her a surprise party that she would love. I also mentioned Shirley, but Bill said, I don't know what to do. Sherry and Ross are very close, Sherry wouldn't do anything to hurt Ross. He said Sherry wouldn't be a part of it. But he pointed out that Shirley knew he was the one who told me who to invite and said I had to be there. To help him with his plan, I pretended to be more drunk than I actually was at the party to avoid Ross. And when the girls came up to me, the next day after work, I talked to a computer-savvy shipping colleague, and I told him what I wanted. I called Sherry and told her I would use her idea. But I want to surprise everyone, so I'm proposing a Sunday afternoon around 3 o'clock. I'll be at the 0 o'clock p.m. I also asked for her help, and she very kindly agreed to. I left it up to her to contact all the people who were going to be at the party and said she needed to get Rose out of the house on Sunday to go to the party. A few hours later, just before we hung up, I said that next I would let Ross's parents know that I went to buy Rose lunch at her place of work, but she said she couldn't go because she had a meeting. Because I went to invite her boss to her birthday party, and I told him about the surprise birthday party I was going to. I told him I was preparing for her and that it would be great if he could attend, and I suggested he bring his friend along. My wife said it would be a fun party, and I expressed my hope that he would come and asked if he could park in the grade school so she wouldn't see all the cars when Rose's friends took her home. He said it would be a fun event. After work, I went to Rosa's parents' house and told them about my idea to throw a birthday party for Rosa. I got some pictures of Rosa from birth to the wedding. I showed him all my stuff and told him what I wanted the party to be like. He suggested to me a different approach, one that would have a greater impact on everyone. After I agreed, he told me he would have it done and ready by Wednesday, and I went to the attorney's office. When I started the divorce proceedings, I cited cheating as the reason, and my attorney advised me to go to court. By filing a lawsuit against Ross's bosses and the company they work for, I am confident that I will be able to get compensation from them. Friday night I met with Bill at Ross's company, and I said, when you think things are, they always seem to find a way. Bill asked me what I meant, and when I went to see my lawyer on Wednesday. When I left the law firm, all I could think about was my marriage. The question means I forgot to go back to work and forgot to send out a bid for a job the company lost, and they suspended me. If it weren't for the fact that my boss knew my marriage was going downhill, I would have. I've been fired from my job and my boss wants me to stay away from Ross so I can get. He gave me the use of a share of time in Mexico and told me that if I wanted to keep my job, I had to go to Mexico. By Wednesday, Bill asked me if I was going to Mexico, and I said yes because I couldn't afford to lose the job, and I suggested that we. At Rose's birthday party, I explained the details and what might happen. I'm still hoping how the party will go once I start taking photos. I want him to meet you. The person playing the bartender will deliver the divorce papers to Rose and give them to her boss when she gets home. Rose got mad and asked where I was, and I told her I was with Bill, but she didn't believe me and said it was no big deal. But she disagreed, thinking it was a big deal because she'd come home early with good news, and I wasn't there with Rose. She said I drank too much and avoided her, saying I must have a girlfriend. I think she realizes she's trying to get a position promotion by approaching her boss. I kept thinking about what Bill had said, and I realized I needed to apologize for denying that I had a girlfriend and asking. He good news she shared made her very excited as she was promoted and would be the new regional manager. Ross, the sales manager, was so happy that he jumped up and down and then ran into my arms and gave me a big hug, which surprised me. She said, "Now we can get the baby we want," and pushed me. I inquired of her about the rose nestled against my breast, and from the tone of her voice I could hear. She meant what she said. She was happy for me and said that our relationship was getting better. Promotion said she loved me and that she was sure I would get her pregnant. And then she looked at me, and Rose looked up at me. Seeing that I wanted a baby, she thought the tears in my eyes were because of the baby, but they were actually because of me. She grabbed my hand and led me to the bedroom where we climaxed together. On Saturday morning, she again expressed a desire for intimacy, and I obeyed her, though my participation was. While I was in the shower, Rose walked in with a concerned look on her face and asked if I needed any help. She expressed surprise that I hadn't been able to outdo her in the sex department lately. Just so I don't rule out that something may have gone wrong, I mentioned my behavioral changes. I said that I felt responsible for our relationship. The inability to conceive implies that something may be wrong with my body, and given that she had been off her medication for several months, I suggested that she seek medical advice. Something's wrong with my body. I should see a doctor. In response to my question, she encouraged me that I was putting too much pressure on myself. She said she knew I'd get her pregnant soon. Even if she can't explain it, I bet you could if you wanted to. Saturday night, Rose wanted to have sex. But I did it this time, and it would be our last, so I gave her everything I had. I'm in a low mood. I just want to make love Sunday morning comes, and I'm not in the mood. I'm nervous as hell. I figured I should be in Rose's shower. So I called Shirley and asked her if she had a plan to get Rose out of the house. She told me that she was proud of me for throwing this party for Rose because she knew Rose would always remember it. I asked Rose what she had planned for that day, and she said Bill had called. I told her that Ross even made breakfast for the four of us. 3:10 Sherry followed Rose into the bedroom. Everyone at our house was surprised to see her, and Rose was really surprised to come over and give me a big hug because as I looked around at the guests, I heard Rose ask Shir if she had invited her boss. Shirley said no, which got Rose worried again, and with Rose and my two key players in place, the party was officially underway. I waited nearly 2 hours while people laughed and laughed to make sure everyone got food. And we had lots of. I gathered everyone into the living room and thanked them for coming. Before we started working on cards and gifts, she suggested we look at the first half of Rose's 50th birthday. Then I invite you all to take your seats. I turned on the TV and laptop. I said, okay, let's do it. At 2 months old, she was lying on her back while someone whistled at her, and someone laughed at her. I blushed when the next photo appeared on the screen, and I joked or explained that I had asked Ross's mom for input on each photo. This led to some teasing moments from elementary school through high school. Her determination is evident in college photos, including the one of her smiling in our wedding picture. Then came a comment about my long hair, then a picture of Rose's workplace, then her. The next photo shows Rose's boss with his employees. At the Moss party, our table mate's wife, Rose, sat next to her boss, and another employee and I sat next to her. I looked at her and her boss, and they looked upset too. The boss will recognize her hard work and help her get a regional sales manager position, and I looked at Ross straight away. Since she had already told me about her promotion, I began to play the video, emphasizing the effort Rose had put into her new position. After the video, more pictures show an empty bed, and Rose tells her boss it's the last time. With their permission, the video switched to Rose lying on the bed, her boss pinning her legs together, and I urged her to. If she wants to be promoted, she has to take certain actions. Change to Rose on her hands and knees, her boss behind her holding her hips in an intimate manner. The video shows her doing well in the promotion process, and it looks like her bosses are happy with her position. After about 15 seconds of playback, another 15 seconds of. In the remaining seconds, she showed 2 more positions, but then chaos erupted as Ross and friends screamed for the. She apologized with tears in her eyes, and her boss tried to hurry up and leave, but my friend Bill told him. As Bill tried to push my ally away, her boss sat down. When the stupid man answered his name, the legal papers were thrown into his lap, and Shirley tried to. Sherry grabbed her by the hair, pushed her to the ground, and yanked her onto the couch. When Shirley fell, she took Rose's arm and turned her around. Bossman lands a right hook to Ross's cheekbone, knocking Ross to the ground. Shirley was pushed back, landed on her side, and leapt to her feet, screaming as she quickly grabbed the boss lady Bill. I walked over to help, but Shirley had fallen to the ground, and I had to pick her up. Bill was holding Shirley, and I thought it was all over. But then the boss's wife turned around and started abusing Rose, who was now in her hands. Her hands and knees reached over to rest on the ottoman chair, and she slowly raised her knees in an attempt to stand, but she was still dizzy from the punch, so she ended up facing the boss lady with her legs about a foot apart, and I walked over to help. I turned my head to look at the boss's wife, only to see her take a step. The boss's wife took a step toward my wife and then kicked Rose right between the legs. At that very instant, Rose's arm was shaken by the violent impact. If the boss lady had been kicking a soccer ball, the ball could easily have gone 40 yards, while Ross's body flew 2 feet upward and 3 feet forward. She let out a scream I'd never heard before, and she landed on the ottoman chair, then bounced and fell to the floor. She screamed from the moment she was kicked until she ended up on her knees on the carpet. Her hands came up to her chest, tucked between her legs, and she cried harder than anyone I've ever heard cry. He grabbed the boss's wife by the back of her neck and pulled her out of the house, telling her and her husband to leave because Bill, the boss's wife who forced her out, shouted, "Special circumstances, I know it." Now, Hurley got down on her knees to help Rose up and shouted for me to back off. I ignored Shirley and went over to Rose to comfort her, saying that I didn't mean to hurt anyone and that she was in pain right now. I knew she hadn't heard me, and then I looked down and saw blood seeping in her cotton pants. She noticed my blood and told me to call an ambulance, but instead of riding with Rose, I drove my car. On the contrary, I did not plan this personal attack, nor did I want Ross to be physically harmed, and I didn't know what I was going to do about it. Bill, Shirley, and I were in the waiting room when the ER doctor came to talk to us. He told me that Ross was going in for surgery, and as soon as the specialist arrived, he asked me what had happened. I told him that she had been kicked in the groin a couple times by another woman, but I refused. A few hours later, the surgeon came to update me, and they said they had never seen her. They explained that the force of the impact hit the root of her clitoris, causing injuries to her vagina and vaginal opening. The doctor said they had fixed everything, but they were worried about her clitoris. They said that if the wound didn't heal well, it could affect her sex life. The clitoral region plays an important role in women's enjoyment of sex, helping them reach orgasm. The doctor mentioned that if the treatment is not done properly, it may prevent her from having an orgasm. She'll be in rehab for a few hours, and then I can leave the hospital to visit her. Later, Shir and I had dinner and talked for a while, and then I went home Monday morning, around 10 o'clock. I'll be in touch tomorrow at 10 a.m. I got a call. Sherry asked me when I was going to see Rose, and I'm not sure, but I think it might be tomorrow, and Sherry keeps pushing me. So I decided to turn off my cell phone on Tuesday, and after lunch I went to Ross's room, and Shirley gave me in. As I approached Rose's bedside, she gave a disapproving look. Sherry interrupted, and I admitted that my intention was to humiliate and embarrass her, who caused the end of our marriage. Anger, I want to make it clear that I never intended or wished her any fissy, cow harm, and I also want to. Claire Turfey said that while I was very upset, I never meant to hurt her. I expressed the hope that she would believe me, and Rose's tears streamed down her face, prompting me to turn to the. However, Rose reached out and grabbed my hand, pleading with me not to go, assuring me that she believed me. I would not hurt her physically, and begged me to stay and talk to her, but I refused, saying I could not. I told her that because I was so upset about her cheating, I was in a bad place mentally and emotionally, which caused me to. After making a big mistake at work, the company is planning to fire me. My boss knows about our marital problems. I told Rose that I would be away from work for a month, but that I would. I was facing disciplinary action, and my boss did me a favor and suspended me without pay for 30 days. I need to organize my thoughts. My boss offered me his timeshare in Mexico and allowed me to work there. Sure said I couldn't leave Rose because she needed me, and explained that I could leave, emphasizing that I couldn't risk losing my job. The teacher pointed to Rose and said that she was the one who taught me to value my work over my marriage, and Rose hastened to interject that she. I'm sorry. I said there's one more thing. I'm not done with your boss. I promise I'll make him pay. I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm telling you this because I think that he'll find a way to blame you for the fact that the house has been cleaned, the party stuff is thrown on the kitchen table, and the divorce papers. When I mentioned the divorce papers, Rose gave me a big hug and hoped I wouldn't pull her away. As the tears began to flow again, I said, Ross, and I left that material, and I don't. I hope you find a good lawyer. I gotta go. Because I had a plane to catch, Rose and I had a long talk about the divorce papers, which she still doesn't know about. I told her that she couldn't control me and that I didn't have to do anything for her. I started to walk out the door, but Rose called out to me to wait, and I stopped and turned toward her. She told me she loved me and asked me if I would meet her at that moment when I got her. I said, Ross, I'm really miserable with you. Maybe I'll think differently when I get back. Waiting for me outside the hospital to take me to the airport. I also asked Bill to keep me informed of any developments related to Boss Ross, which he promised to do. So Bill also offered to provide an update on Ross. Bill smiled and said I still love her. I am 32 and currently divorcing my 33-year-old husband. My wife is 30 years old, and 6 years ago, I found out that my wife was unfaithful to me and was with someone else, my son. A few weeks ago, I found out that my wife had been unfaithful to me, and 6 years ago, her sister. During a visit, she told me, my wife slept with her best friend when she had her first child. She was drunk, and at the time I apologized because I was really worried, so I went straight to a paternity test with my son. A week later, the results came back and he was not my biological child. I had the evidence, so I confronted my wife in the evening when the baby was asleep and she asked me what had happened, and I told her it was none of her business, though she might be working. Despite her promises that nothing has happened since then, and her claims that, even though I didn't believe it and blamed the alcohol, I didn't insult her to avoid complications in the divorce. Instead of taking responsibility, during our conversation, she had some complications in the divorce process. She threatened to get full custody of the child, and I expressed an interest in any child that was not biological and allowed her to continue to raise the child. She tried to convince me to share custody of the child with the child's other parent, and she called me a fuddy-duddy. I got very angry and told her to take the baby and go. I called her a fool. I'm still at home, and it was a gift to my parents. Took the kids to her parents' house and hasn't contacted me since. Decision my dad was right in thinking I wasn't raising a non-blood relative, and I'm now going to a therapist 3 times a week. He said leaving behind the things that make me miserable is the first step. Emotions are running high, but my brother and sister suggested I write something here that might distract me. I didn't know what to do. My wife told me everything because she felt so guilty. She saw me happy with my son and knew he knew what he was doing. She told me in a moment of weakness when we were visiting her, and it made her feel guilty. I hated my wife and felt bitter and resentful toward my children, but I was determined to move forward, and I hoped the divorce would be. If she wants child support, I have proof of that. The child's paternity test, which my attorney said would be sufficient for any legal proceedings. Child or wife, because I need to focus on my own well-being. The child is no longer my responsibility, and accepting this was crucial to my emotional recovery. My ex-girlfriend came to my house and asked to come in. I went out and met her at the door and told her she couldn't come in. If she had anything to say, she should have said it there. She was practically begging me to take her. My son came back and said she understood me cutting off all contact. She said she deserved it, but raising a child. Her dream is to become a notary public working in public records, and she has 2 years to go before she realizes that dream. I tried to calmly explain that my therapist had suggested that she notarize an open position in the judiciary. I asked her to leave before I lost my cool, especially the innocence created by her actions. We were on the street, and I told her that the child deserved better care, and that it was her current responsibility to provide better care after the fact. We talked a little longer, and she resisted the impulse to cry or ma. Kua fuss, for we were in the street, and she valued the. She finally asked me to at least show her the dogs, which I refused because I thought it would be best for her. Letting them get used to her absence, a long goodbye, would only make them ecstatic. She nodded and left for 2 days. Later, she called me after receiving the divorce papers, and I made a mistake in answering. I told her to contact my civil attorney if she had any questions. I blocked her number if there were any problems, and she never came to my house or called me on the same day. I contacted a friend from my master's program and suggested hanging out together. Finally, last Friday I proposed to her to be my exclusive couple, and she accepted and spent the night at my house. I appreciate my dog, so I'm glad she's here. She knows the conflict between my ex-husband and I and my children, and she respects my decision, and she asked me why I was doing it. I told her that maybe when he gets older, he'll understand my decision. She nodded happily. I must take care of myself in the process. Simply put, I am now officially divorced. In cases not involving community property, joint property, or children, an expedited divorce is one that takes place at the municipal level and does not include the usual judicial procedures. Proceedings often include settlement, asset distribution, and more. And as you may have guessed, the only question is, the issue of paternity became complicated when it came to our shared son. My name and I were successfully removed from his birth certificate, leaving his mother's and my names. To say that the divorce process is challenging is an understatement. I've used my child's mental state to get my heart back many times, but looking back at what happened, I held on. I'm grateful to my current partner for supporting me through this. After much discussion, I suggested that we split her son's paycheck while fortunately, she agreed to cover the remaining costs herself, taking care of her son, and she agrees with that. I was shocked, so I asked her if she had talked to the father of the child, and she said she has. He even stayed with them at her parents' house for 2 weeks, but they just didn't have anything in common. As a result, they argued a lot, and she had to step in to stop them from having a big fight. and after a few weeks, he left. She's sad, she's got a good job, she's in great shape, she's got a year's allowance for babysitting, she's got a lot of money. I'm not going to talk to him yet. Maybe in a couple years, or when he has kids. If my child doesn't want to talk to me, I won't insist on it, and I can understand if he resents it. In particular, I felt it was rude to express my hatred for having a new partner so soon, especially because of the current partner was present, and I had to intervene in an argument between the two, even though I had signed the divorce papers, and I maintained a sympathetic demeanor throughout the conversation. She had always eyed herself on her efforts to achieve success, and the look on my face seemed to hurt and anger her. If she's delusional, that's none of my business. She signed the papers, and I was finally able to move on with my life after a year in which I made half of minimum wage. Despite the negative feelings I still harbor towards her, I agreed to take on the babysitting position at a reasonable rate. I still resent her, but I try not to express it directly or wish her harm. She has enough issues to deal with, and I'm grateful that my current partner puts up with it all. She said she didn't have to be there for me, or that I didn't have to worry about it, but she said my problems were hers too, and she also understood the reason for my reluctance. I'm thankful that she at least understood this section of my book. My life is coming to an end, but it won't affect me long term. I've been married for 16 years and together for 20 years. We have 3 kids, and I found out she was having an affair by packing up her cell phone and reading her texts. She ended an affair with a co-worker and tried unsuccessfully to repair our marriage. Moved out in October 2018 and quickly moved out in November 2018 with her affair partner's divorce was finalized in December 2019, and until last week, when she called me in tears and asked if I could take the kids for a sleepover. I asked her what was wrong, and she said it was karma. While the object of the affair was in the shower, she found tons of explicit Facebook messages on his cell phone, just like I found. Evidence of her affair. My ex-husband is 39 years old, and his new affair partner is 28 years old and married. I should say that I was initially pleased with this turn of events, and I warned her that this guy was dangerous. But after hearing her out, I realized she was really in love with him, and I felt bad for her, but she apologized more. She has caused me more pain than I have ever felt before. In the last 6 months, my ex-husband has almost found out about my affair again, but my ex-girlfriend is still obsessed with him, and they still keep in touch. Even though they weren't officially married, my ex still wears his ex-husband's ring, and I think she'll get it back, unlike when she took my money. She stays at his apartment sometimes, but she says they're just friends. So why don't we? Spending the night at our ex's house, sleeping in their bed, and just hanging out. I'm still glad she thinks everyone is naive. She had to change jobs because she was friendly with the plant manager at her previous workplace, and they were always talking, eating lunch, riding the Harley, pumping the brakes, and so on. Rumors were flying, and things got messy. Her work friend is married with 3 kids, but he still visits her. She was apparently caught kissing someone in the driveway by our teenage son. He didn't know who this person was, so he called me and asked me. She was under the impression that she and her ex-husband were still together, and that he had grilled and mowed the lawn at her house the day before. Another new guy showed up. She wouldn't say how or where she met him. They went on 2 dates, and she didn't seem to like him that much. They met at their old jobs, and he kept saying he wanted to be with all her friends and coworkers. We were talking to some coworkers the other day about retirement, and she knew that my plan was to semi-retire, which I plan to do in 6 years. When I'm done paying child support and my kids are 18, I want to move down south. She told me a story about how she raised all of our children while I was starting my business. She said she'll probably work until she dies and never retire. I give as much time and energy to our family as she does. In fact, I do it more than she does, and she's out 4 or 5 nights a week partying with friends. My answer to her was, "You've made your choice. Leave me and go with your assistant." Is her retirement plan, and now has up to $14,000 in her 401k account. Retired, she was in her early 402nd year, and even if she stayed or went back to her idol, or whatever she decided to do, fair income, no savings, retired and struggling to make ends meet, no pot to piss in or window to throw it through. So I want to pass on my thoughts to all of you who are going through a divorce or are about to be divorced, and there is some causality involved. Here's the thing, from October 2018 through December 2019, My life was torn apart because our finalizing the divorce fast forward a few years, and I'm happier than I've ever been. I want to retire early and enjoy beach time. My kids and I have never been closer. When things seem so dark and scary, be a good person. Don't lie or cheat. Don't try to malign or get the kids involved. Stay strong, my friends. You can do it.